This is the ERP Advisor.
Today's episode, moving to a new ERP system doesn't have to suck.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Moving to a New ERP System Doesn't Have to Suck, in collaboration with Fortis. Shawn Windle is one of our speakers for today. Shawn is the founder and managing principal of ERP Advisors Group based in Denver, Colorado. Shawn has over 30 years of experience in the enterprise software industry, helping hundreds of clients across many industries with selecting and implementing a wide variety of enterprise solutions. His podcast, The ERP Advisor, has dozens of episodes with tens of thousands of downloads and is featured on prominent podcast platforms such as Apple and Spotify. Eric Meyer is our other speaker for today. Eric is the director of ERP partnerships NetSuite at Fortis. With over 15 years in the fintech industry and over 20 years of experience in ERP ecosystems, Eric brings a wealth of knowledge to the table, including hands-on implementation of ERP systems across both enterprise and middle market organizations. In this live panel, we will unpack a few myths about changing to a new ERP system, when to make the switch, and discuss some of the green flags of modernizing your payment processor along the way. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Rebecca and Eric. We're really excited to have you and to spend some time with you. So thanks for being in the office. I wish I could be there with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. The whole team at ERP Advisors has been great. And, I'm excited to really talk to you guys more about, what's going on in the ERP market.
Yeah, great. Love to hear it. Eric, just to kind of start, can you give our viewers some background on what Fortis Pay is in case they don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. So Fortis Pay, we are, essentially a payment processor. So the way that we approach it, we actually, the founders of our company came out of the hospitality industry. So we really believe in providing that white glove approach for payments, because, to me, before I actually started working in payments was just kind of a black box that, it's got its own complexities and how you work with it. So we try to make it very simple for people to work with. And really the biggest area of growth that we're experiencing that we project is working with multiple ERP systems. So we've worked with a number of them. I know you mentioned NetSuite, but we actually work with a number of them across the board. So.
And Shawn, we normally don't do this, but since it's a special event and we might have some new viewers, do you want to give a little background on ERP Advisors Group?
Sure. So I founded ERP Advisors Group a long time ago. Actually, I happen to know exactly. It's about 15 years ago because we're about to celebrate our 15th anniversary. I don't know if Eric, you're going to be around next week, but anybody come into the office on Friday. Yeah. We're really excited. It's been a wild 15 years. Before that, I personally worked with a large accounting firm doing advisory work, and then with Accenture and some software companies along the way as well. So I've been doing this, as Rebecca reminds me on every call, for a little too long. But all we do is independent objective ERP advisory services. So we don't sell or take commissions or any cuts from any vendors at all, whether ERP or payment or any vendors, but we help clients figure out what do they really need to do, then help them through a selection of finding all the technology solutions that they should get, and then help with the client side stuff that is extremely hard and causes lots of problems and all that other stuff. But that's EAG.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I was talking to Eric this morning when we were setting up for the call, and I know, Eric, your background is in ERP, so I think people are going to get a lot out of this discussion today. And with that being said, Shawn, what are some of the signs it might be time to upgrade to a new ERP?
Yeah, I think I get this question on every single call. and it's so funny because while it's basic, there are still things that I'm learning like every week, right? And this is from seeing clients throughout the whole life cycle. But there's three key things that I think I'd talk about. The first one, and it's probably the most obvious, is that the system is no longer doing what you need it to do. So you may have outgrown the accounting application. You may have new kinds of revenue sources that your payment systems don't support. You may have other business requirements. You've gotten bigger. There's more employees. There's more transaction volume. right? There's a lot of different reasons and things that kind of kick in around what the system is no longer doing. So those are usually pretty obvious. Like those are things that you're like, oh my gosh, I needed to do this and it's not doing it, right? Those
Yeah.
are kind of like, we call those like you've got a thorn in the big toe. Like, you got the thorn, so you got to rip it out and hopefully you get software that doesn't suck. So I love that title. The second thing is, and this one is a little bit more, I almost said nefarious, but it's a little more obscure, which is your systems may be sunsetted, meaning, especially in today's environment. And I think, Eric, you're going to probably touch on this too. We've got a lot of legacy software that's out there. I mean, tons and tons of companies and organizations and are running software that the application provider, the software vendor, is saying, that's it. We're not doing this anymore, especially with a lot of on-prem software. Almost all, like every single one of the vendors has moved to a different model of deploying software, and they really want their customers on the cloud version, the subscription-based versions, whatever it is. And it's not just to make more money every year, although it is, but the value proposition makes a lot more sense. So even though you might like despise your vendor because they are sunsetting the app you're on, almost all of them have really good apps that you can migrate to. And it also might be a good time to look outside too, because it's probably been a while since you've looked at new software. But the last thing I'd say is that your business, your organization, your business processes have just become more complex. And that's a really important one too, because as industries are evolving, and I mean industries, right? We used to call it, oh, we're gonna, Uber an industry like steel manufacturing or something, right? Like meaning tons of automation that really took off and spread like wildfire fire throughout like the taxi industry. That's just the smallest piece of complexity that the technologies or that businesses are going through. Are their technologies are just changing, but many of our clients are having to do their manufacturer. Well, but they're actually a distributor. Well, they're actually a services firm, right? Or services companies now sell products. And so with all these complexities and the way that the business is working, I mean, we could go on and on about tariffs if we want to, and how landed cost, changes, that calculation changes every week. So the complexity is the third piece that I would say, it's probably time to upgrade.
Yeah. And Eric, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
I think, Shawn, when you talk about having essentially different service lines, or when a manufacturing company is a service company and a service company looks to reduce their inventory or increase their revenue by having some inventory sales on their premise or anything like that, I have that conversation almost every day. I actually had a conversation this morning with a company that does the fiber optics. And it's like, so this is our main revenue stream. However, here's what we really see in the future. And here's what we have as subscription. And here's how we see it, not only like you highlighted, not only is it going to be better for us because it's going to be low maintenance, but it's going to be better for our customers as well. So yeah, great points.
Yeah. And I think that kind of leads into our next question, Eric, which I'll have you kick off, is what are some of the trends that you're currently seeing across the market? Is there more of a dire need for people to be changing their ERP systems?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Shawn definitely hit on it. Is the biggest thing is how much change is happening. And we are seeing a lot of change in the respect that more systems are being sunsetted, and more systems are being sunsetted, not only because of like Shawn said, moving from on-prem to off-prem or cloud, but just additionally, getting everybody on the same code base and getting everybody to a place where you can really use that economies of scale. 10 years ago, when you talk about, hey, we be able to build something in the cloud, and you're going to get the benefit of everybody else's enhancements. It's really just everyday usage for people now. So especially while that, the change that is hard, it's really hard for a lot of people to be embracing a lot of this change. But being able to, just like in your personal life, sometimes you just got to, like you said, rip off the Band-Aid, make things are going better, so that after you get that thorn out and you're healed, then you're up and running fast. Another thing I would say, not only on the change side, but really complexities of business. We touched on it with, essentially having different service lines or different ways of doing business within one company. But the ability to do that and regulations and compliance as you move forward with, everybody's talk, one of the biggest things I hear about right now is obviously controlling costs. And Shawn touched on that with landed costs, but how can I, make my business, essentially lower cost to operate so I can increase my profit margins. So adding on additional services, but not only overlay that with new compliance. And, one of the things that I really have been diving into lately is compliance doesn't necessarily mean all of the things that you don't want to talk about. Compliance in a lot of ways means that you can save money because a lot of the things that you do become less risky. Less risk to your financiers or through payments means that it's lower costs. So working through a lot of that. And related to that, end customers just really demand more. Shawn said the word Uber. It used to be like Kleenex, became a brand. And now people just assume that you're going to get a high level of service. I remember it was last summer when they had the Microsoft outage. I was actually traveling in Chicago, and luckily we were planning on going to a Cubs game that afternoon, so we didn't have to worry too much about travel. Many of my colleagues that were there couldn't travel, but then we couldn't, speaking of using an Uber, we couldn't even get an Uber. So you can just see like when people just have this level of expectation of service, and when that drops off, that it can affect your business significantly. And one other thing that I've definitely seen is more technologies, emerging technologies. I focus, especially in payments, focus a lot in the fintech space. One of the great examples of that is, a couple technologies that we just take for granted. If I wanted to have a unified bank login, 10 years ago, I would have to go manually type in all my different things. But companies, people just expect now you can use a service where it's going to get your information aggregated and be able to bring it in there. So that's really sort of the biggest things I've seen.
Yeah, and how, Shawn, just to add to that, how do you feel like this is impacting the technology stack and really like the architecture of the system? Because I think that that's changing too with some of these market trends from people coming off of legacy systems and trying to get to the cloud. Best of breed versus hybrid, this, that, composable. What do I want out of my system?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're only 12 minutes in, or I should say we got all the way to 12 minutes before I brought up what, Rebecca? AI. Of
Oh,
course.
it's like,
Yes.
I was trying, Cheetos?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, and I'm really curious too to hear, Eric, from your perspective on this too, because I think we see payment solutions like you guys with Fortis. You're really on the cutting edge with a lot of the technology side, not just integrations, but everything else that goes with it. But quickly, um, I don't want to get super technical here, but I'm going to get a little bit right because again, what we really look for in these calls is education. We want people to really understand sort of the where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. And when you really understand the history, you can look forward into the future and sort of have at least a little bit of a platform that you're looking at. And yeah, the last 50 years or so of ERP, I haven't been involved that long, although I am that old. I didn't start ERP when I was like 6 months. I kind of wish I had. Maybe my mom missed out on that, but that's okay. I had other things to do. But we've like transitioned. It seems like it's been like a millennia of transition. There's so many changes and so many different people coming up with AS400 based mainframe systems. I'm not going to go back that far, although some of our clients still run mainframe.
I was going to say, yeah, never count them out. They're always they're still
absolutely
around.
not. And
Yeah.
I may have started my career coding in COBOL, which I did. So you've got mainframe systems, right? Then you went down to like the Unix systems, the mid-range. Then you had client server, right? Then we had ASP, the application service providers 25 years ago, right? Then we sort of went to cloud. Now we're going with the hyperscalers, with the Google, the Amazons, and Microsoft Azure, Oracle. All the money that they're putting into infrastructure, just billions and billions. We were on a call with a CIO of one of the largest software vendors recently, and he was talking about their relationship. Amazon,
Yeah.
and the amount of dollars being put into technology infrastructure, Rebecca, getting back to your question, it's just never been done before. Like ever, 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 ever. The information technology industry has never had the amount of just capital being poured into it, really more poured into the ground and into the GPUs and the other servers that are running all of this crazy AI complex software, which really isn't more complex. It's just we're able to accomplish more with software than we've been able to before. We can do more complex processing. And we had another vendor reach out to us today, right? That's building all AI based, procure to pay and all these other systems. But the long story short is this isn't like a trend, right? It's like, oh, cloud was a trend. Not really, like not at all. But a lot of people they still haven't taken advantage of that. Okay, fine, right? But this AI, it's really going to change the way that businesses operate. And we have companies that are 30, 40 years old that are saying, okay, I'm not going to make a decision on payments, or I'm not going to make a decision on ERP until I really understand the AI strategy that's coming from these different vendors. I'm like, wow, like I'm impressed, because like you've almost got like Fred Flintstone type tabulation that you're doing with your old system right now. And now you want to have like the top AI system. I love it. That's great. There are steps that you have to take. I think that's the key thing that I would say, is that you can't go from, an old client server system from the 80s all the way to the top, right? You're going to have to make some steps to get there. But the technology infrastructure, in my opinion, has never been more important in the 30 years that I've been around, and when I was a child, like programming a little bit. But it's never been more like encompassing what's about to happen here and is starting to happen. It really almost has happened. And so it's just so vital that you really understand what your vendors are doing around technology and AI and those kinds of things. I mean, Eric, do you have any thoughts on that from what you
Oh,
guys are?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I could probably talk. I'm sure, Rebecca could get bored with us talking about AI all afternoon. But the one thing that I've definitely seen is because it's just almost mainstream now for AI, that people don't even realize is AI. There's really two examples that stand out to me on that. One is, just content, being able to consolidate content in a way that humans just take longer to do. I've seen that specifically for example, within ERP, using content to do initial triage on customer communications. Like, how hot is this customer? How happy is this customer? How do we actually route that? How do we take care of that customer just by using a couple cues? All the way up to something like you said, in terms of, using AI. One of the business partners that I work with quite a bit right now works with construction companies. And they're able to use AI just to go through inside of their ERP and say, hey, here's what we see your budget currently looking like. Here's what we see the red flags for your project are. Here's what we see you doing right, and here's what we see doing wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a great starting point to then have a discussion, that could even be used on ERP projects. Just being able to take all that data and consolidate it as a starting point to then have a much more educated decision. Not decision, but a much more educated discussion in terms of, that is right, that we are seeing these risks, or those things are going correct. And then being able to go into your, and they're basing all of this off of actual transaction data in an ERP system. So being able to take those, innovations like that and just make your day simpler. And it's how long would it usually take you to consolidate all that data just to have an educated starting point? And then that's where you can take and have your, the experts in your company actually say, okay, that does seem right. That doesn't seem right. So being able to work with it on that.
Yeah. And I think that's at the heart of why I asked the question was, I mean, the process of getting there, it's a journey and it takes a lot, but ultimately, like, getting a new ERP doesn't suck, because you're getting all of these new things that you wouldn't be able to do. And frankly, the market's accelerating so quickly that if you're not making these decisions now or becoming aware of them, then you're going to get left behind. And I think leading into that, both of you can tag team this question, because I'm sure with your experience, you've both seen a lot. You're in the trenches every day. But why do ERP projects ultimately fail?
Mm. I can take that on. We have a couple different scenarios that I would love to share. Like as you guys are listening to this today, and then for the future people, like sometimes I'm like, you really need to listen. This is one of those times that you really need to listen. My hair was black before this call. Actually, these clients keep giving me more gray hairs. Ah. Um, we have two different scenarios right now that are pretty interesting. One of them is a project that has continued to go on for a while. It's gone on longer than all of us expected, and it's sort of this. You hear of these ERP failures of projects that we look at three different key things. You have to look at these three things to gauge where your project's at and where it's going. You have to look at budget, you have to look at scope, and you have to look at timing. Okay, we'll borrow the three-legged stool from the Project Management Institute, I think is where that stems from, and others. But if two of those parts of the stool aren't within expectation, you're probably going to have a failed project. But if it's just one of them, you're lucky, and I mean it. Because something you have to remember about ERP, and I think this is probably similar on the payment side, Eric. I want you to talk about that. I really want you to highlight that because we've had some good successes with you guys here.
Yeah.
But nobody has ever implemented from your legacy system with your data to whatever the new system is that you're moving to. Nobody has ever done that before. But come on, Shawn. There's tons of companies that have gone from GP to NetSuite or from SAP R3 to IFS or. I can tell you all the permeations and combinations because we work with them every single day. Actually, my team can tell you more than I can now. But that specific journey that goes from your app, how you configured and customized usually, and how you built your data out, never done before. I don't care if you have a competitor that's the exact same. They're not running the exact same systems. So you really must understand that the process, it's so unique to you that you have to understand what you need, what your data structures are, how things are set up. You have to understand the requirements of the new system and how their data structures are set up. And look, the only way you're ever going to do that is to actually do it. You can't take the money and the time to figure all this stuff out in advance, So, are you just winging a project? Yeah, kind of. I mean, we have tons of methodology. We all kind of know the things that we should do. I think we even have some great stats that one of you guys will share too on some of this on change management and people and that. But you have to remember your process is your process. And so the key thing with that is that you're just aware throughout every single step, and you do find implementation partners that do have experience with similar businesses as yours or nonprofits, and that you are working with software vendors that are really good people, and the implementation partners, they're really good people, because you're probably going to ask them to do something later that you thought was in scope, and they're going to say, it ain't in scope. And you're going to say, it's in scope. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to start fighting with you. And I'm like, okay, well, it's your business after all, right? And clients just don't understand that amount of complexity. And so it's really, really tricky. And that's why you have to understand that whole process throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Eric, just to lead you kind of into a question so we can talk about Fortis Pay, because I'm definitely curious your perspective because that's what you guys do.
Yep.
I know one of your colleagues, Maureen, sent over some statistics, and she said that at least 95% of organizations say they realized some improvements in processes because of ERP. So they may not have been necessarily looking for those improvements in the first place, but then all of a sudden they get a new ERP and they realize, oh, wow, we need payment processing or this whole thing's going to fall apart. And what do you have to say to that? And like, how does that fit into an ERP selection?
Yeah, absolutely. And great stat. And Maureen's always awesome at picking those out. But yeah, it's related. It's not unrelated to what Shawn said, because our first question is always going to be, hey, we see this change, we see some shiny object, we can do all those things. And the first questions we have to ask is, how are you currently doing it? And because you're, like you said, it's you guys, I use crawl, walk, run. but you have to make it a journey, right? And so it's really two things: is how are you currently doing it, where do we want to get, and it's applicable to payments, because everybody, one of the most common things that we get right now is, hey, I want to make it so people can use Apple Pay on my phone or Google Pay, whichever it is. And it's like, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Manufacturer, how do you want to do that? And how do you think your clients are going to currently embrace that change? Because while it does have some great, features to it, what does that really mean to your end customer, and how are we going to do that? Maybe there's a better way that we can actually get you to that point before you actually need to move completely to mobile payments. For example, one of the things that we've been investing a lot of our time in lately is a concept called 3D Secure. So 3D Secure is one of those payment terms that, like I said, is just kind of a black box to me. And really what it means is, myself as a consumer, when I make a payment, if I get a text message or some sort of validation to my phone saying, hey, we want to make sure that this is you doing the transaction, that flips the risk from the customer or the end user, the company that's implementing ERP, over to Visa, over to MasterCard, over to American Express, because I have said, hey, that's my transaction. Now that it's on the card brands, if that's if there's a bad actor involved, that's on their security. So it reduces their amount of payments, reduces their amount of cost of accepting that payment. And really it makes everybody, makes everybody in the transaction a lot happier. I had heard some pushback that like people might not adopt it because, what is this doing? And to me, it's just, hey, that's a way of doing business where technology can help you. So it's really like you said, it's understanding where you want to get, but then also finding the right solution for it.
Yeah. And I think part of our process is people. And Shawn, we talk about that quite a bit. And one of the other statistics that Maureen brought to our attention, again, from Founder Jar, and one of their top statistics for ERP in 2025, the biggest barrier to implementation is a resistance to change, which I think is something that you both kind of touched on. And of the companies that do not use ERP, some 82% say they do not either know how to or do not want to embrace that change. And I think we've talked about this on a lot of calls. Sometimes it needs to happen, even if your people are resistant to it. How do you combat that in order to prevent it from tanking your implementation?
Yeah, I've got a great example from what Shawn said is, that one is, we don't know how to address it. And as Shawn said, there are so many great people that you can utilize from the people that are helping you implement it. The conversation that when I first, when I was a client, I had this, and it's, hey, we want to do this. And having the people that are helping me do that say, you might want to reinvestigate why you're asking that question. And here's why. So I'm asking for a change because it's easy for me, and for them to just walk you through and say, hey, here's the 3 things that you might want to think about with that. And here's how it could be more helpful for you, or it's a different solution. So it's understanding the change without really me or, myself as a client or my company having to be like, oh, that's really going to, all of this perceived change, it's going to be really hard for me, and making it, bite-sized so I can actually work with it.
I want to add to that too, if I can, Rebecca, that again, in 3 implementations that we're in right now that are pretty challenging. Like I said, you got the 3-legged stool. The timeline has been pushed for sure. We've had a couple change orders, but we're going to get all the scope, and we're going to be able to go live successfully, which is the most important thing. But I don't know if my clients are listening to this right now. I wish they were. That it is so tricky, so freaking tricky. That's not really what I want to say.
Is that a technical term, Shawn?
Yeah,
Just want to check in on that. Yeah.
You know where I'm going. To have employees in your organization that have been with you for a while, and they have expectations of either what the system should do or their workload, right, during the implementation, and they're wrong, right? Just the expectations are just wrong. And yet they're saying, we're going through this change. I should have this. I should have this. And because it's this unique journey, your own unicorn journey with rainbows and buttercups, hardly. Although you should have extra compensation. And yeah, we had one client that had a big margarita party a couple weeks ago when they went live with their payroll system. And it was awesome. It was great. I loved it, just the fun. And they had tacos and everything. It's like, yes, you got to celebrate it. But what I'm trying to say is, there will be users that are resistant to change, and you already know who they are going into an ERP implementation. It's not like, oh my gosh, we didn't know. I mean, maybe somebody pops up, right? But they're usually the people who've been around that are just resistant to any major change. And then you put them through an ERP project, and then you let them set the expectation for what's going to get delivered. You'll fail. Unequivocally, that's going to happen. Now, these are important people, and you have to think with what is best for your organization, right? Like, them leaving or you firing them probably isn't the best thing. I hate to see that happen. I don't want that to see that happen all the time. All the time, I say. But you've got to keep this in mind. Like, I can think of one implementation we're going through right now where their expectations are really high, and they should be high because they spent a lot for software. Although we also know they didn't spend as much as they could have had we not managed the scope and all that other stuff. And their expectations are high. And maybe they never did all those things in their old system, but now they think the new one should do it. And we have a really tight timeline, right? So you got all these three factors coming together. And the company's going to feel like, it was a hard implementation. It was really hard. But we're going to go live, and then we're going to have a phase 2. We're going to do some more of the custom stuff now that we're used to the app. I can't say this enough, that you have no idea what you're really getting into with that project, or when the ERP, the payment systems. I mean, they're all pretty complex. Get into them. Start using them. Minimum viable product, please. I need to get down on my hands and knees and beg, please, MVP. So that you get the win, you get into the app, you get used to it. You start to see, oh, it works this way. Oh, it's that way. Okay, well, let's just change this, and this. You don't see the product sometimes until it's fully implemented. So that's what I see as a big change, Rebecca, factor, is that you have individuals who just set super high expectations for what the app should do. They're all tired because they're doing their day job and doing the implementation. And sometimes you just got to say, well, it did take us 25 years to build our last system. Maybe this one's going to take more than a couple years to get used to.
Yep. Yeah. That's if you don't mind if I sort of spin off that, Rebecca, we at Fortis, we are a big proponent of getting involved with user groups across the different ERPs that we work with. And I host a couple of them, and we usually try to do a panel question. And my first question that we get from experienced executives that have done this is, what's one thing that you could tell somebody who's about to embark on this journey that's going to make it better for them? And one of the CFOs that we talked to in Nashville not too long ago, he had a great answer. He's basically said, he's like, obviously, he's like, these companies are going to give you a roadmap. He's like, you need to have your own roadmap. You need to understand where you want to be and what's going to be successful for you, especially like you're saying, based off your budgets, based off your constraints. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about working with companies like yours, Shawn, is that determining those success criteria up front. So not only what the right ERP is, and then companies like us, we can we work with multiple ERPs. So if you're using NetSuite, Microsoft, Sage, whichever, we can say, here's the things that you want to focus on with that different, system. So understanding what system is going to be the best for you, as long as is very important, as well as how you're going to define success.
You guys didn't need me on that last question, because I was going to ask how you could be proactive so that your new ERP project doesn't suck, but you guys dove right into that. And so those were all the questions I had for you. But is there anything, if someone is sitting in this call right now, and both of you, if you want them to leave with something, like a little nugget, what would you like them to take away?
I can go ahead.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you sort of like look, ERP doesn't have to suck. It is hard. It is all those things, right? Again, we're like living some implementations right now where I'm like, I got to crawl out and like, okay, wait a minute. What is this really all about? What's the change that the company's going to get? You know, they're going to get off these legacy systems that the person who's running it really wants to retire. Um, Another client, they wanted to automate the heck out of a bunch of stuff, and they're going to get so much more than they ever did today because there's mistakes, they're losing money, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to get a ton of that stuff, right? And another client, you know, they're able to do the regulatory and compliance that you talked about, Eric, at a whole new level. Like, like it will help their day sales outstanding. DSO is what I really should have said. Immensely. I think it'll be reduced by half. I think they're going to get paid faster because of the way they can do their invoicing processing. So I see all the benefits. I know they're all there, right? And if they're not, we like jump all over it and fix it, right? That's our job as ERP advisors. But I will tell you, the real benefit of these enterprise systems, the ERP projects, is to do things like to be able to provide better payment options, like such simple things, right, Eric? To just flip it on, flip switches. Okay, good, we're ready. You know, you did all that work. Now let's get these new payment systems in place. And it can really revolutionize your business, new revenue streams, you know, it can increase profitability. But, you know, tell us about that just at the end of the meeting here, like, the value that you guys provide, it's pretty significant. You're not paying me to say this. We wanted you guys to come on because we love the partnership with you guys. Again, it's informal. We don't get paid by it. But you know, what do you really see at the end of the day, the benefit of this?
I mean, well, I think you said it's two things. One is managing expectations. The change is going to be there, but highlighting what's going to be better and what's going to change that you're going to manage. But then, as you also said, like payments, you know, one of the things I like about working for Fortis is that I can really stand behind it when we say, hey, we might be able to help you pay for part of your ERP project. And having that discussion in terms of how much does it cost you to accept payments currently? And then we can sit down and say, you know, here's a couple ways we can save you money. And here's ways that we can do it, you know, not only right now, but here's how you can save money and here's how you can make more money. So, and that's, you know, again, for us too, it's not going to happen overnight. Some of them with payments, that's one of the great things is some of them do happen overnight, but then looking at it from a long term and understanding how you can embrace that change in a positive way moving forward.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being on the call today. I do think that there was a lot of value in this. And again, Eric, we appreciate you coming into the office. Even though Shawn's not here, we were able to host you, and that's always.
Oh, I'll come back. Hopefully we can go across the street for a margarita party with successful clients, right?
There
Shawn?
you go. That's the official margarita party place.
Yeah.
No more, still not sponsored content unless they want.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate your partnership, and anybody on this call, please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, comments, concerns about either parts of this. Partners like Fortis are the reason that we're able to deliver to our clients. And so we just appreciate being able to bring them on and let them talk about their perspective. And again, have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I can get you Eric's contact information. I can get you Shawn's. I can connect you with the right people. And just thank you again for joining us. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much for having us. Bye-bye.
Bye.